なんて言ったらいいのかな。はい。こんにちは、道元です。今から、マンションについてしばらく話したいと思ってるんですけれども、ほとんどの視聴者はおそらく英語を母語とする方だと思いますので、英語で話します。あとは、かなり長い動画になると思うんで、字幕をつける時間がちょっとなくて、日本語を母語とする方にちょっと申し訳ないんですけれども、はい。これから、マンションの購入について、しばらく英語で話を、したいと思います。Okay, so hey everyone, Dogen here. I'm going to try and spend a good amount of time talking about the process I went through buying my condominium in Japan. This is really weird for me because all of my content is always either in Japanese or it's completely scripted, or the rare times that I speak English, I'm talking to someone. So I'm really, really bad at talking without any kind of script. So I apologize for that beforehand. And I made a couple notes on my phone that I'll refer to, but yeah, I guess let's just get started. So, how did I come across, or how did I get into this process of buying a condo in Japan? How did this whole thing start? So, no, well, I guess my patrons know, but I actually have kids. I have twins that are about 1 year and about 2.5 months year old, 2.5 months old, and so we live in a 2 bedroom apartment. You call it 2 LDK in Nihongo. So what that is it's a basic apartment with two bedrooms and a fairly large living room. And I'll put up a tour video of this place as well once we've cleaned out all the boxes. We're in the process of moving, so it's kind of crazy right now. But yeah, we've got kids, and things are getting more and more and more cramped because they're twins. So we've got 2 baby beds in our bedroom with our bed, so there's no room in there, and the living room is completely dedicated to their play space. But that's getting full of full with their clothes and their toys and stuff like that. And then I have my office in the other bedroom, but because they're tired of playing in the living room all the time, and because there's no space to play in the other bedroom where we sleep, they always end up playing in here, and they knock over my mic and my tripod with my computer, and yeah. So, anyways, it's the place that we have right now is quite nice, but for a Japanese apartment, it's fairly, I would say, it's on the larger side. So that means each month we're paying about 750 US dollars based on the current, what do you call it? Ryogai reito, currency exchange rates. So, yeah, about $750 a month here, and we're paying that for a space that has served us pretty well since the twins were born, but it's starting to get a little bit cramped and a little bit more difficult to use, and we find ourselves basically doing playtime in the hallways all the time. So we talked in the past a little bit about whether or not it would be possible to buy a house in Japan, and a house or a condo. And I've always been more interested in a condo because I don't know, something about the idea of living in the upper floor of a relatively high building with a nice view over, the ocean, stuff like that. I really like that. And I always have. It's just my personal preference. So, okay, if we buy, is it going to be a house or a condo? I'm leaning more on the condo side, and my wife says, okay, I'm cool with that too. So, but we don't know if any of this is possible on our current budget if we're spending, $750 a month currently on our rent. And so just happened to get this flyer in the mail that says it's from a real estate agent / architect firm, and they're putting up a whole bunch of new condos in Beppu and Oita. Beppu is the city I live in Beppu and Oita and all across Kyushu. And it had a line on it that said, you can live in this condo for $600, $700 converted into yen a month with a 35-year loan. And I'll get into this later, but a 35-year loan in Japan is normal. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, wait, what? Because it had 2 additional rooms compared to what we have here now. And everything was just nicer. I mean, this place was new when we moved in here, but just even nicer. So like the materials that they used and in the bathroom and the flooring and everything was nicer. So it was like, okay, maybe we should try and learn more about this. And so we went and we checked it out, and we got a tour of the property, the condo, and it was okay. I mean, the inside was very, very nice. But again, one of the things that I've always been interested in is having a nice view. I would gladly spend like a fourth, maybe not a fourth, maybe a fifth of like my budget for a house on the view, on the land. And so the location was great. And the inside, it was all brand new and it was very nice, but it didn't have a very nice view. And so we were like, I don't know, it's kind of not for us. And so the real estate agent said, okay, well, we've got another place. It's a couple years older, but it has a nice view. Would you like to go see that? So it's a little bit older, so it's a little bit cheaper, but it's... I can't give away too much personal details, obviously, so I'll just... kind of fudge the numbers by saying this. It's the upper third floors in one of the upper third floors in a building that's more than 10 stories high. So nice view. And so we went and we checked it out, and I fell in love with it immediately. So did my wife. And we said, okay, we'd like to get this place, what should we do next? And so at this point, we haven't done any research on like the loan, like applying for a loan or a mortgage. In Japanese, by the way, you always say jutaku loan, and that means mortgage in Japanese. So I always say loan even when I'm explaining the situation in English, and that's because I'm used to saying the Japanese word, which is a foreign word, loan. So whenever I say loan, just know that it means mortgage. Yeah, we went there and we checked it out. We really liked it, and we said we'd like to learn more. And she said, "Okay, well, it's this price." And again, I can't give too much details out because my financial situation and stuff like that. But I'll say this: it's the price of the property, the whole total package. The condo was in the ballpark of the price of the average American house. When I looked that up like about a year ago. I don't know what it's at right now, but when I looked it up about a year ago, it was around a similar price. So you'll see what it looks like in the upcoming tour video, but so she said, it's this much. Would you be comfortable paying this much? And I said, yeah, that's in our range, because I plan on living my whole life, the rest of my life in Japan, provided there's no dramatic changes in my circumstances. But the thing I was concerned about is, even if I can financially, if that's in my financial zone, so to speak, can I get a loan from the bank because I'm a foreigner? So this is like the number one question that I got from all you guys. It's, what's the deal if you're a foreigner? Can you buy a house in Japan? Can you get a loan if you're a foreigner? So a little bit more about my situation now. I'm married to a Japanese national. My wife is Japanese. She doesn't work though. And so I provide all of the income for us. All the money comes from me. So on the books, it's all coming out on my side, but she's the Japanese national. And my status, my visa is, it's like a spousal visa. So the reason that I can stay in Japan is because my visa is, I'm married to a Japanese national. And you can essentially renew that as many times as you want, provided you don't commit any crimes or anything like that. So I've been married to my wife, depends on, if you could just go by the paperwork, about 4-ish years. So and I'll get more into that later as well. But I do not have permanent residence in Japan, which is essentially the same thing as having a green card in like the United States. So if you have permanent residence in Japan, basically any major financial institution will treat you the exact same way as they would treat a Japanese citizen. So they'll look at like, your end of the year tax statement and stuff like that, the same way that they would look at a Japanese average, employee at a company or something like that. But I have a really weird situation because I don't have permanent residence, even though I've been in Japan for about 9 years, and I could probably get it if I applied for it. But the issue with us is that, we really wanted to get this place, and luckily we ended up getting it. But it takes a long time to get permanent residence. Like the application process from beginning to end is about a year long. So even if I applied for it the day of, the day that we went and we saw the condominium to begin with, sorry, my knees hurt. It would be, there's a good chance that someone would swoop in, before us, beneath us, ahead of us, and buy the property, just because if it was a Japanese person, they wouldn't have to go through that process. They could just apply for the loan pretty easily as long as they had a stable job, and then get the money and boom, it'd be done. So we had a different situation. And this is, again, where all the questions that you guys asked me essentially are related to this topic. But so the next thing that happened is the real estate agent said, okay, well, if you're really interested in buying it and you can commit to buying it if you get approved to a loan, if you get approved for a loan, then maybe I can try and help you out more. So obviously it's in the real estate agents, the real estate companies' interest to even to treat a foreigner quite well, because it was a property that had been on the market for a relatively 2 years, but the price had been, anyway, they wanted to sell it and I said I wanted to buy it. So they were willing to help me out in order to get the loan. So the next thing that happened is I had a meeting with, it was myself, someone from the bank, and the real estate agent. And so the person from the bank said, okay, before we had the meeting, they said, you need to bring records of all the money that you've made essentially for the past 2 years. So luckily I'm responsible and I stay on top of my taxes and all that, even though I get a lot of money. A fair amount of the money that I make, I get from not my normal job, but from like YouTube and Patreon and stuff like that. So I have been reporting that all as the correct way ever since I started to get it, even before I was even making like $2,000 a year on everything online. So I had all the records for everything because I'd been doing that. And that's really, really important to do if you ever plan on buying a property in Japan. You need to make sure that you have the records of everything, because the Japanese financial institutions, I would say, are probably, I don't have anything to compare this with, but well, they're very, very careful, and they want to make sure that every detail is perfect. So I had all of my papers, and you need to have that, and I brought them all in. And he said, okay, well, based on these numbers, I can't, give any promises, but we may be able to lend to you. Okay. I should talk about this beforehand. So the person from the bank, the real estate agent, the first thing that she did after we expressed interest in buying is she said, okay, well, you don't have permanent residence, but maybe I'll try calling a few local banks and see if anyone will lend to you. And so she called Oita Bank. I live in Oita Prefecture. She called Oita Bank, and they denied her. They said if he doesn't have permanent residence, no. And I understand that she called a couple of other banks too, but I don't remember their names. So I think she called 3 or 4 banks before she arrived at a bank called Nishihon City Ginko, so West Japan City Bank. And I want to put the name of the bank in here because they were gracious enough to lend to me despite me not having permanent residence. So thank you. I think that if any other foreigner in Japan doesn't have permanent residence, maybe they would be one of the first places that you would want to try and contact. West Japan City Bank, Nippon or Nihon City Ginko. They lend to foreigners even if they don't have permanent residence. However, one of the main reasons that they decided to lend to me, sorry, my knees again, is because I'm married to a Japanese national, a Japanese citizen, and I have been for more than 3 years. So that's one of the big checks that they have for when they lend to foreigners. That's one of the things they look at. Has he been married to a Japanese citizen for a relatively long time? It looks like they're not going to get a divorce, and working, making this much money. Okay, probably he'll be in Japan for a long time, and he's expressing interest in buying this. So obviously, that's also further proof that he'll probably be in Japan for, the foreseeable future, at least as long as it takes to pay off the loan. So this bank said they would lend to me. And, they said they would try to lend to me, and they would, there's an application process, as there would be for any mortgage. In Japan, it's a 2-process. There's a double application. So initially, it's like a pre-screening application. So you submit a bunch of forms that don't have to be official. So I had a bunch of records that I printed off directly from the internet, from Patreon and YouTube and Google AdSense and stuff like that showed how much money I was making. So I printed all that off, again, on top of the income statement that I get from my normal work. I work at a higher educational institution in Japan. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So I've got 2 jobs essentially. So one, a normal job, and all the YouTube, Patreon, Japanese related stuff. So that's 2 multiple income sources. So they looked at all of the unofficial documents, and they said, okay, if you're making this much money, we can lend to you. However, this is just the pre-screening. So now what you need to do is you need to get we need all of this information on official documents. So rather than me printing out something from Patreon that said I made X much money last year, I had to instead go to the city office and go to the tax branch of the city office and have them print out a form that said, Dogen paid this much money in taxes last year because he reported this much money on his income statement or whatever. So this is why you have to make sure that you're on top of your taxes, anywhere obviously, but especially in Japan, because you need to get that directly from the city office, and it's all based on how much money you reported the previous year. So they look at, my understanding is that they look at at least the previous 2 years. So, and I had records for all of that because I had been doing it properly. And just make sure that you do that as soon as possible. You don't want to get behind at all, because if you get 1 year behind, it's going to delay the entire process. And if you end up finding a property that you like and you find out, actually I need at least 2 years worth of receipts and tax receipts and stuff like that from the city office, then that's going to hurt. So make sure that you're on top of that from the get-go. Okay, so we got all of those forms from the city office. I also had to make, obviously all foreigners in Japan that have been here for more than a month or whatever, probably 6 months or so, that work in Japan for even a little bit, make inkan or official seals, stamps. Yeah. So I had to make a new one and get it registered with the city office. So when you buy something big in Japan, like a house or a condo, or I imagine maybe some really expensive cars or maybe boats or something like that, you often have to use an officially registered inkan. So I made a new inkan as well for me and my wife, and we got those registered at the city office. And that was the inspiration for that video I did about every time I go to the city office, because I must have written my address and my name and my phone number, I don't know, literally 20 times just to get 4 different papers. But anyways, I digress. So we got all the official documents, after the bank had already given us approval from the pre-screening on the unofficial documents, and we submitted it to the bank, all the new documents, all the official stuff. And a week later, they got back to us and they said, okay, you've been approved. So the next thing that happens is you need to put down I need to talk about this as well. So because I've been doing YouTube for a very long time, since 2006 actually, but I've only been making I started again essentially regularly in 2016, I believe, and I've only been making any significant amount of money off of YouTube really in like the past year and a half. So they were looking at the amount of money that I made last year and the year before. So the year before that, my only income, I was like $1,000 total off of everything online, plus my income at the Japanese educational institution that I work at. And so this previous year, it was much different because I made a significant amount of money, more significant amount of money on my online endeavors. So I had that and the educational institution in Japan. So two income sources. But because I had only had the income from the online activities, it wasn't stable. The bank was kind of like, well, this is kind of iffy. Like the amount of money is good. Like you're on a good track, but this is going to be a 35-year loan. So even if you made a good amount of money this previous year, then that's not good for us. So one of the things that happened during not the negotiation process, but during the application process is I asked, is there anything that I can do to make it more likely that I'll be approved for the loan? And they said, yes, well, you're already married to a Japanese national, but on top of that, if you put down a substantial amount of money from the get-go. So I forget what the term is, atamakin. I think, atamakin in Japanese, it's like the down payment, I guess, on the house, on the property, or on the condominium. So they said the more money that you can put down on the down payment, the more likely it is that you'll pass the application process, because at the very least it means that you're at least a little bit frugal and that you've been saving money. So again, I can't give too many exact details, but I will say that we put down, let's see, approximately 10% of the total value of the property. So again, if you think it's in the ballpark of the average American property, multiply that by 10%, 0.1, and that's about how much money I put down in cash. So that helped a lot during the application process. So one of the other things I kind of wanted to talk about is if you do ever think that you're going to be living in Japan, try and be thrifty. I've been, you guys know, I don't buy new clothes. I wear the same clothes all the time. Use the same background. I don't have any expenses when it comes to going out and exploring. And I drink maybe like once a year. I don't really go out to party or anything like that. I live rather modestly. I like to think I do anyways. I bought like my camera, my lens, my tripod, all this stuff basically used because you can, and you can save money. So I've been trying to do that for a very long time because, again, I've had that end goal of buying a property in Japan. So, and I knew that probably the more money I could spend on that the more money I could put on the down payment, the more likely I'd be approved. It would be that I'd be approved. So I've been saving my money and living modestly, in my eyes, for, I don't know, since graduating from college, essentially. So, which is about 10 years ago. So not quite 10 years ago, but almost 10 years ago. So, that's another point to cover. So we put down 10% and we got approved, and I brought the money in cash to the bank, and then you have to like sit down with someone that's kind of like a lawyer. How am I doing on time? I'm expecting a phone call from another company that's cleaning the place right now. Some of like the laundry area, and has some weird smell. So I might have to pick up my phone during this. How far are we doing on time? 25 minutes. Okay. Okay, so good. I'm surprised I haven't stopped recording and tried starting again from the beginning so far. Anyways, I need to stop going on these tangents. Put down the money. When you go for the official getting the keys, there's like a lawyer there, and they give you like some forms that say, okay, this is like you own the property now. And you have to do another like 15 or 20 papers and write your name and address and phone number and stuff like that. But again, I'd like to, what's the right term? I forget how you say this in English, but I want to give another shout out to Nishi Nihon City Bank, Nishi Nippon Shiri Ginko. And that's because they were awesome the whole entire time. Like I on my channel a lot, there's a lot of jokes where I kind of poke fun at how some things in Japan are kind of weird, like maybe a little bit backwards and stuff like that. But they had to do a bunch of extra work because I was a foreigner. So like they had to do all this research on, like American taxes and stuff like that. And Americans have, like, you have to give them your social security number because the American government is like really, really strict when it comes to like taxes and owning assets overseas and stuff like that. So yeah, they really put in the time and effort. So yeah, another shout out to Nishi Nihon City Bank. They were awesome from the very beginning to the very end, and despite all the extra work that they did on my behalf. So thank you again to them. And then I got the keys, and then I came back and I made the video that you saw the other day. Okay, so that was the basic process. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some additional things that I think that you guys would probably be interested in when it comes to buying a property in Japan. Okay, I've just got kind of a bunch of notes in arbitrary order. I didn't really have time to sort these because, again, we're in the middle of moving right now. You guys can't see right now, but there's cardboard boxes all over this room. Okay, first thing, the sales tax in Japan right now, shohize, is 8%. And that applies to houses, condominiums as well. But it's about to go up to 10%. And I think that if you buy in, I think that it gets implemented early next year, like March, I want to say like March or April 2019. And again, that would be if, let's say you're buying a house that's $100,000, again, arbitrary number. That's the difference between $8,000 and $10,000, just on the taxes that you have to pay. And when you take into account that you're going to be, paying that difference with interest, that small difference, 2%, is massive in the long run. So if you're thinking about buying in Japan right now and you're watching this video right now and you're in a position where you can buy in Japan right now, do it because the rate is about to go up to 10% and that's going to hurt a lot. So that's good to be aware of. It's at 8% right now. It's about to go up to 10%. Okay, point number 2. This is pretty obvious, but self-explanatory, but you have to have a very, very strong command of Japanese. And I like to trash on N1 a lot because I think it's not practical, really, because it doesn't take into account speaking, which I think is by far the most important thing when it comes to language. But in terms of like, not grammar, I would say vocabulary, terms, advanced terms that you need to know when buying a house, N1 level is probably, I don't think N2 would cut it, even though N2 is probably good for most working situations, because you're going to be talking about things like, again, like deductions on your tax return and stuff like that, like housing deductions on your tax return, like this kind of lingo in Japanese. So either you need to have like N1 from the get-go or like N2 and then put in a bunch of additional study hours into just terms related to buying a house. So I've been living in Japan again, almost 10 years now. So, and I got N1 a while ago, so I didn't really need to do any more additional research. I picked up a few more terms along the way, but another thing to keep in mind is that the banks want to have confidence in whoever they're going to be lending money to. And even if you're a really intelligent person, if you don't speak the language that they do, it'll make you seem less intelligent than you actually are in most circumstances. So not only do you need the language ability to get the loan, to apply for the loan, to understand what you're getting yourself into, but to make it look like you're someone that is capable and has the means of paying it back. And again, the more professional, that's the word I'm looking for, you look, the bank, that's going to be beneficial for you from the beginning to the end, and the bank's going to look at that. So, and they told me multiple times throughout the process, like, oh, it's so good that you understand this and we don't have to explain this to you. So definitely be aware of that. Language, very important. Okay. Check. Okay. So I talked about, okay, that, I covered that. Home deduction. Okay, the next thing I'm going to talk about is the benefits of living in rural Japan. I'm going to go on a little mini tangent here, but I lived in Tokyo for 1 year. I studied abroad in one of the major universities in Tokyo, and I had a great time when I was in Tokyo for the most part. I got kind of burned out at the end, but it was mostly because of like the relationship that I was in and my personal circumstances, and not so much of not because of Tokyo, so to speak, but Tokyo is a great place to go for like 1 year, maybe 2 years. Or for the person that has never really been to Japan and has an image of Japan, if you go to Japan, I actually think Yokohama is better for that, like the image of Japan. But if you go to Japan and you want to go, Harajuku and Shinjuku, Shibuya, and like all those places, hit the bases. Is that the term? I don't know. Tokyo will be the place because, it's what you see in all the movies and the anime and stuff like that. But everything is more expensive in Tokyo, and everything is more, it wears on you in Tokyo. Like the commute in Tokyo in the morning it's hard. And like, if you're a woman, there's a good chance that I don't know if good chance is the right term, but you hear all sorts of horror stories about, people that get like molested on the trains and stuff like that. And like, it's a good place to be for a year, but you can live in Japan and get all the benefits of living in Japan, like the great healthcare system and like one of the things I love about Japan is the common sense of the average citizen, the average person that lives here is very, very high. So, and that's basically goes for anywhere in Japan. So if you can experience something that's comparable to, Tokyo in terms of standard of living, at least, but do it for a fraction of the cost. And the only downside is that, maybe you can't go out to like the famous, nightclubs, if you're into that, or like concerts and stuff like that, every week or every month, then if that's like a must for you, then Tokyo is good. But I would think if you want to live in Japan for a long time, Tokyo depends on the individual, but it's not for me. And I think that a lot of people who are interested in Japan should live in Tokyo for a year and then go somewhere else. And so not only can you save a lot of money if you move out of Japan, but also you can experience other parts of Japan. And also it's a lot more calm and not as hectic. So I really recommend living in a location that's about an hour away, by 30 minutes to an hour away by train from one of the major cities. So I don't recommend living in like Yokohama or Nagoya or Osaka or Kobe or Hiroshima or Fukuoka, but I recommend living like 30 minutes away from one of those cities because, sorry, my twins might be crying. Maybe not. Okay. if you can get there in 30 minutes, you can go to all the major, like, concerts and stuff like that. And you can have, like, go to Costco when you need to and stuff like that. But again, it's so much cheaper to live like 30 minutes away than if you live in like the heart of one of those cities. Like Tokyo, the apartment that I live in right now, if it was in Tokyo, it would be probably $2,000 a month. No joke. And it's $750 here in Oita, super inaka. But I love the city that I live in right now. I don't intend on ever moving, obviously, because I just bought a house here. But yeah, that's a little tangent. Consider rural Japan. You'll save money. It's calmer. It's still Japan. And it's still just as convenient, except for maybe rare instances of, like, again, concerts. Okay, done. Okay. Buy soon for taxes. We talked about that. And also, I definitely don't want to say get married as soon as possible if you want to buy in Japan. But again, one of the things that banks look at is, have you been married for at least 3 years to a Japanese national? So if you know that you're going to get married to someone in Japan, married to a Japanese national, if you're positive that you're going to do that, and you're also positive that you want to live in Japan for at least 30 or 40 years, then it might be good to get married 6 months earlier or a year earlier than what you originally intended, because you'll be able to apply and you'll be able to get a loan in Japan that much sooner. Another good thing to keep in mind. Okay, next thing, interest rates. So a lot of people said 35 years, are you crazy? This is actually pretty normal. And one of the reasons for this is because the interest rates in Japan right now are crazy, crazy, crazy low. And so I forget what they are in the States. I just remember having a conversation with my parents when we were talking about the interest rates. And I have a floating rate loan right now. And it's, I think, 0.85%. So I can get higher interest on that on like an online savings account through like Goldman Sachs or something like that. So 35 years in Japan is not only pretty normal, but the interest rates are crazy low to begin with. So that's why 35 years or so is normal, because the amount that you're paying back just to the interest each month is pretty low to begin with. So I'm already paying like 3/4 of each of my payments. It goes directly into the principal, so the value of the property itself. So that's another good thing to keep in mind. Interest rates in Japan right now are crazy low. So if you're an American, the ideal, I think, I don't like to toot my own horn, but I think if you're an American in Japan, if you can get your income from the States, you don't have to pay American taxes as long as you're in Japan for, I think, 350 days a year, and as long as your income isn't more than $100,000. So you don't have to pay any American taxes, but the exchange rate will work in your favor, and you can still maintain connections with American banks that offer much higher interest rates on their savings accounts, or even something like, like a high yield dividend or something like that in the stock market. You can make more money investing in the American market right now than you would be losing money through your mortgage in Japan, because the rates are so low. Okay, that was a little bit complicated. I don't think I explained that properly, but got to move on because we're already 40 minutes in and I'm expecting to call real soon. So maybe I'll make another video if you guys have a lot of interest in that. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is the home loan deduction. So for those who don't know, I don't mean to be I don't want to like... Okay, so I'm going to explain what a deduction is real quick for those who don't know. So when you pay your taxes at the end of the year and the government says, okay, you need to pay $5,000 to the government, a deduction is, it's a way to save part of that money. You don't have to pay all of that money. So there's what's called a home loan deduction, or a mortgage deduction maybe in the States. I don't know what it's called in the States, but if you buy a house in Japan and you're still paying that money back, you haven't paid all of that money yet, then you can apply for a home loan deduction. So if I have to pay $5,000 to the government in Japan, again, arbitrary number, maybe I only have to pay $4,000 depending on the amount of money that I have left on my home loan. So I can't really, again, go into too many specifics, but this is very big for people that are interested. So the way that it works, again, arbitrary number, let's say that you're going to spend $100,000 on a home. So you take $100,000 and you don't put any money into the down payment. So you get a loan of $100,000. You can deduct 1% of all the money that's left on your loan from your tax payment at the end of the year. So 1% of $100,000 is $1,000. So if, again, I had to pay $5,000 to the Japanese government at the end of the year, because I'm in the process of paying back my house as opposed to renting an apartment, then I can directly take off that $1,000 from my end of the year tax statement. And that's because my loan was more than $100,000. That means the 1% of the loan that I took out was a significant amount of money that I don't need to pay off to, I don't need to pay to the Japanese government this year. So, and it's actually almost, I'll get more into the details probably later if I have time, but the deduction in most cases is going to be the largest deduction that you can get on your tax return at the end of the year. So again, if you're going to buy a house in Japan, there's a good chance that you'll actually save money for like the first maybe year or two, because it's calculated based on the remaining amount of total money that you have to pay off. So if I've already paid off $50,000 and I have $50,000 left, then I would only have $500 that I can deduct. And you can only use that home deduction for 10 years. But the first year of that 10-year period, when you still have all of your loan remaining, that's going to be a significant amount of money that you don't need to pay to the Japanese government. So that, not that you don't need to pay, that you can just save and maybe reinvest back in the States and get more of that interest money back. That's going to be higher than the interest that you're paying to the banks or against your loan in Japan. So definitely be aware of the home loan deduction in Japan. It's huge. You'll save a ton of money just from that loan. Okay, yeah. And 35 years is normal. Okay. And yeah, I talked about this earlier, but the last note on my things that I wanted to talk about was that the real estate agent found a bank for us that would lend to a foreigner in Japan that did not have permanent residence, because it was in their interest, because they were trying to sell the property as well. So that's another good thing to be aware of. Many times, if you seem like a respectable person that might have the potential to pay for the price of the property, again, it's in their interest to help you do that, because they'll be making a large commission in selling the property to you. So even if you're not super knowledgeable on the process of buying a house in Japan, they're going to try and meet you at least a little bit in the middle, because they're going to be making money doing so. Okay, so right now we're 45 minutes in, and I haven't answered any questions directly, but I actually think that this is a good place to stop, because I have about, it looks like probably 30 or maybe 40 questions that I got, and I'm going to answer every single one of them. But if I do that right now, this video is going to end up being like an hour and like 20 minutes or so. So I'm going to stop the video right here, and I'm going to make another video where I just answer questions. So yes, this again was a very, very strange video for me, because I never do impromptu English alone. So I stuttered a lot, and I was probably really weird and not Dogen-esque, but I hope it wasn't too terrible. And I hope that you guys are looking forward to the tour video. And again, if you have any more questions that I didn't answer in this video, leave a comment and I'll be sure to include those in the upcoming video because I'm still going to make that separate video. So still rambling here. I'm going to cut the video here. Thanks for all the support. Honestly, like you guys made this whole thing possible and I can't express my gratitude enough. Thank you. ありがとうございます。すいません。じゃあ切ります。はい。今後ともよろしくお願いします。